Okay.
So anybody cannot join after 100, they will have to go to the YouTube. There you are, I can see you all on YouTube. All right, you're back on. Hi, Vicky.
Chandrika sent a video of this talking to the.
This is Professor Neelika on the main screen.
She's the professor.
Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
I think it's time to start, Maruf.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, let me share a screen, if you don't mind. And then Karunian will start the meeting, yeah?
Okay.
He is one of our colleagues who passed away around the 10th of this month.
Okay, Maruf,
Yes.
I got cut off for whatever reason. But shall we start the meeting?
I just suggested that, Arunian.
Can
We should
you see the, all of you, can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, Karunian, you can start.
Okay, all right, folks. First of all, thank you all very much for coming. We are starting the meeting today, at which we have a very renowned professor talking to us from Sri Lanka. Thank you, Neelika. But we're going to start the meeting by remembering our good friend and colleague, Nirmala. Nirmala, she was a Nirmala Nadaraja, and you can see a picture there. She was with us in the medical school. Nirmala passed away, and let's start off by having a moment of silence, 2 minutes silence, and in memory of her and to remember her. So let's be silent for about a minute or so. Thank you. Thank you. Just very briefly, Nirmala, I got to know Nirmala quite well in medical school. So she did not stay close to, she was J, I was A. She was a member of the Student Christian Movement. I was also a member of the Student Christian Movement. I got to know her there. She was a very friendly, very warm, very kind person. And she was always smiling, if you remember her, those who remember her. After medical school, she married Dr. Jayaraj Jeyaratnam. Jayaraj Jeyaratnam was about 3 years our senior and was the son of Dr. Jeyaratnam, who was a consultant obstetrician at Castle Street. I think Kodda worked with him. Kodikara worked with Dr. Jeyaratnam. I was there too. And then she got married to him and moved to Singapore, where Jayaraj became professor of public health. And Nirmala practiced in Singapore. I don't think she specialized very much. She had 4 children. One is a doctor, and they're all in different parts of the world. And she eventually ended up settling down in England, in close to Keswick. And then in the latter years, she was not keeping too well. She was ailing, and she passed away peacefully. And I think the funeral is over. we will reach out and talk to the husband. But she was a wonderful person, and we remember her very fondly. Does anyone, if there are about 2 minutes, anyone else want to say a few words on her? Okay, all right. So I think that's we miss her, and this is a story we are going to have to say keep on going given our age. But going forward, we are really, really thankful, grateful, and privileged to have Nilika Malavige, and I'm going to let Ranjit Bivikrama, who really did manage to get this organized. Thank you, Ranjit, to introduce this very eminent young lady who's with us today. Ranjit.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker today, who is Professor Gatsauri Nilika Malavige. She comes from a medical family, both her parents being specialists in their own field, the father being a pediatrician and the mother a psychiatrist. Professor Malavige is an alumni of the Colombo Medical Faculty. She graduated MBBS in the year 2000 with first class honors, obtaining 6 distinctions and winning 5 gold medals. In the year 2004, she moved to United Kingdom and joined the MRC, Weatherall Institute of Molecular Medicine at the University of Oxford. She was awarded a Commonwealth Scholarship in 2005 to continue her doctoral studies on the immunology of viral infections. She obtained the Doctorate of Philosophy, D.Phil, from the University of Oxford in 2008 for her work on the immunology of the varicella zoster virus. On her return to Sri Lanka in 2008, she joined the University of Sri Jawatanepura to continue her work on the varicella zoster and the dengue virus. Professor Malavige has worked on investigating the mediators that cause vascular leak in dengue and immune correlates protection against severe dengue. She is currently engaged in researching regarding the COVID-19 pandemic in Sri Lanka, giving updates on the COVID-19 situation from time to time. She is also working on the identification and analysis of new variants of COVID-19. Her laboratory is the only one in Sri Lanka that is able to carry out gene sequencing of the coronavirus. Professor Malavige is a key member of the Oxford University research team conducting COVID-19 antibody tests. She is the recipient of many local and international awards, too many to mention. She has been a member of several local and international organizations dealing in infection, immunity, and allergy. She is currently an executive committee member of the International Society of Infectious Diseases. She is the
Ranjit, your sound is gone. Your
Can
sound
you hear
is
me?
disconnected.
She also serves, can you hear?
Yes, we can hear.
She also serves as a visiting lecturer at the University of Oxford. She is a professor, academic, and researcher from Sri Lanka. She is to speak today on the COVID in Sri Lanka, variants, vaccines, and the way forward.
Thank you so much, sir, for that very extensive, very, very long introduction. Nobody has introduced me in such a long manner, but thank you so much. And it's such a great pleasure to speak to such eminent people like all of you. It's absolute honor. I hope you can see my slides.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, I'm much younger than you. I know you are the 1966 batch and I'm the 2000 batch, but nevertheless, here I am talking to you and giving update about the situation in Sri Lanka. And basically, first of all, I know that you must be knowing that the situation is not good, but I'm just comparing the Sri Lanka. To start off by comparing the situation in Sri Lanka with other countries in the region, South Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and UK and United Kingdom. So when we see the number of confirmed cases per million, I mean, Sri Lanka, number of cases don't seem to be high as much as UK, USA, and Malaysia, although it is higher than other countries in the region. But what is striking is when we look at the confirmed deaths per million people, Sri Lanka is leading. I mean, we have the highest death rates in the region right now. As of now, when we take the countries which have a population of less than 2 million, Sri Lanka is leading in the mortality rates, the deaths per million rates according to WHO statistics right now. So this is quite worrying, and this is not a good thing. And if you look at the moving average case fatality rate, currently the moving average case fatality rate, again, when you look at the region and other countries, Sri Lanka is leading with a case fatality rate of over 5%, which is extremely high. And when we look at, okay, how many positives are we getting? So the share of positives, PCR positives, gives an idea of course, the one thing is the testing, how much testing is done, but it also gives an idea of the extent of the number of cases out there. So in Sri Lanka, in recent days, we are having a positivity rate of over 30%. And if I just show you how our testing is, so we are doing, so this is the share of daily tests that are positive. Sri Lanka is one of those countries in the world, so this is over 30%, which have over 30% positivity. So we are similar to certain countries. I mean, this also has this is between 20 to 30. So the only countries that have a similar positivity rate is this country, I forget what it is, Mexico, Iran, and Indonesia. So this is the situation of Sri Lanka right now. And of course, our testing numbers are very low. When you look at the number of tests done per 1,000 people, we are doing less than 1 test per 1,000 people. And India is doing more than us, and Nepal is doing, Bangladesh is doing more than us. But of course, we are similar to the rates done in Pakistan, Nepal, and because we know that Sri Lanka is going through an economic crisis, and Sri Lanka is spending a huge amount of money on these tests. And so because of economic restraints, we are unable to increase the test numbers than the amount we are currently doing right now. And as Dr. Abhay Vikrama said, we are the only laboratory that is doing gene sequencing in Sri Lanka. And when we look at how we are doing with variants, Delta is the dominant variant in Sri Lanka. But if you look at India and UK and other countries, I mean, 100% of infections in UK, India are Delta. We haven't gone there yet, but we are having a very high share of cases because of Delta, and this is why we're having this surge. So just to summarize the situation before we move on, Sri Lanka has high, if not the highest, deaths per million individuals right now in the world. We have the highest case fatality rates due to dengue, COVID, and we have very high positivity rates with minimum testing because of economic issues. And what do these high case fatality rates indicate? So because the case fatality rates are the number of deaths over number of cases. So when we look at the high case fatality rates, is it because of either not collecting the relevant data or not doing adequate number of tests? And it also means that the hospital systems are overwhelmed. When we don't have enough ICUs, oxygen and drugs and trained staff to care for patients, that is also increases the case fatality rate. And some hospitals are facing these issues right now. Most hospitals are overwhelmed with not enough ICU facilities and so on. And of course, despite all this, I mean, Sri Lanka is undergoing a lockdown, but at least where we are living right now, we don't see that much of a lockdown happening. And I think the risk communication to the public of the actual situation we are in and what grave situation we are in, maybe that is not properly communicated to the authority, to the public, so that they can take relevant measures. Now, coming to before we understand how vaccines work, I think it's important to understand the risk of death from COVID depending on age, to understand about vaccines and variants. So this is by the CDC, and in the CDC, they have taken the reference group as individuals between the ages of 18 to 29. And as you grow older, the risks of death from COVID is higher. So when you compare to this comparison group between the ages of 18 to 29, people between the age of 65 to 74 have a 90 times higher risk than this reference age group. And of course, 75 to 84 has 220 times higher risk than this reference age group. On the other hand, when you go lower down in the age, so the 15 to 17 age group in comparison has a 16 times lower chance of dying, and the 0 to 4 age group 9 times lower risk of dying. So the most important risk factor for death as far as COVID is concerned is age. And there are many other factors which come in, like comorbidities, like diabetes, ischemic heart disease, hypertension. In other words, comorbidities that are associated with endothelial dysfunction. So things like respiratory disease in the form of allergic asthma, which is a risk factor for influenza, doesn't seem to be a risk factor for COVID. But endothelial dysfunction is the important risk factor. And these are the data of Sri Lanka, the confirmed deaths distribution by age. And of course, Sri Lanka is no different to any other country. The highest number of deaths are seen in old age groups and in males. So this male-female discrepancy was seen everywhere in the world, where men were more likely to die than females. And of the comorbidities, diabetes and hypertension do stand out. Now, when it comes to vaccines and variants, the questions are, because we have these variants emerging and of course Delta is taking over the world, questions like, do vaccines prevent symptomatic infections from variants? Because after all, the initial clinical trial data for these vaccines showed quite a good efficacy. Pfizer and Moderna showed around 94% efficacy against symptomatic infection. AstraZeneca showed something like 79. But is it the same for variants? Because it doesn't look like it when you look at the data from countries which have a large proportion of their population vaccinated. And of course, we do hear people who have been fully vaccinated dying. So do vaccines prevent death? And why do some people who have had both vaccines still die? And the other important question is, can you still transmit infection after being fully vaccinated? And in the Sri Lankan context, I think because in Sri Lanka, we have the major vaccine we are using is Sinopharm. We had a little bit of Sputnik. We have AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna. So when we have such a wide variety of vaccines, the question is, are all vaccines similar in efficacy? And so these are the main types of vaccines currently in use. You had mRNA vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna. And this is the first time they're being used. There are no other licensed vaccines. And this is the first time that vaccines using mRNA platform were used for humans. And then we have the viral vector vaccines. And this had been earlier approved for Ebola. And the viral vector vaccines are of AstraZeneca, Gamaleya, which is the Sputnik, and Johnson & Johnson, and CanSino Biologicals. And the ones that have been approved by the WHO are the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson. There are the whole virus inactivated vaccines, which everybody is familiar with because they have been used for a long time, have been around for a long time. And the Sinovac from China, Bharat Biotech, which is inactivated vaccine from India, Sinopharm from China, and this Medica, which I'm not very familiar with, again is inactivated vaccine. Then there is a protein subunit vaccine, Novavax, which looks very promising. It has not yet got WHO approval, and this platform, protein subunit platform, has been used for hepatitis B previously. Now, when we come to the share of people being vaccinated, I mean, Sri Lanka is having an amazing vaccination program, which so many people are being vaccinated every day, and a large amount of resources are being used. So we are doing so much better than all other countries in our region. So if we compare, so 28% of Sri Lankans are fully vaccinated, and another 28 have received only one dose. And when we compare the Sri Lankan data with the region and even countries like Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, and so on, which are upper middle income countries, Sri Lanka is doing okay, and not so well as Malaysia. But of course, we are lagging behind countries like the UK and the USA. But still, we are doing quite well. But the important questions are, of course, we do have quite a significant proportion vaccinated, but we are having quite a large number of people still dying. Yesterday, 214 people died, and that's a large amount for a country like Sri Lanka, where the population is 22 million. So is there a chance of dying after you get fully vaccinated? And the important thing is, once you're vaccinated, your risk of dying doesn't become zero. It reduces the risk of dying, but doesn't make it zero. And the risk of dying depends on your age. So this is a figure from Financial Times. So if you look at an 80-year-old, okay, so a fully vaccinated 80-year-old, after being fully vaccinated, the risk of death drops to the same risk as an unvaccinated 50-year-old. So we know that an unvaccinated 50-year-old is so much less likely to die when the person contracts COVID than an 80-year-old, but the risk of dying of a 50-year-old is not zero. Okay? So, so when a fully vaccinated 80-year-old, the risk is the same as an unvaccinated 50-year-old. When a 50-year-old is fully vaccinated, the risk of dying is the same as an unvaccinated 30-year-old. So this is very age related. And of course, if you have certain comorbidities, vaccines might not respond very well. For instance, if you're on certain immunosuppressive drugs, if you are a transplant patient, or if you have cancers, then vaccines don't respond very well and are not very immunogenic in such individuals. So even if such individuals are fully vaccinated, they might not make an immune response. So this is why I believe in certain countries, they have started to give the booster dose, especially to vulnerable people of those categories. But although people think that, okay, some fully vaccinated people are still dying, you can see the difference vaccines make. So this is the UK, where the number of cases actually mirror the number, so sort of the pyramid for the number of deaths and the number of cases, I mean, it mirrors. So this is UK data from November to early February. But UK is having a large wave right now, when we know that about 35,000 to 40,000 cases are being reported in the UK. But although you have a large number of cases, you don't see the same amount of deaths. And this is why I showed at the very beginning, UK and USA are seeing a large number of cases, but although Sri Lanka reported number of cases are not the same when it comes to per million individuals infected, the Sri Lankan number of deaths are very high. And so vaccines make such a huge difference to mortality rates. And that is the only way that we can move forward. Now, when we look at, again, UK data, because UK presents a lot of data, so this is the actual admissions during the second wave. And although UK is experiencing a large outbreak right now, the number of hospitalizations are very less. And if they didn't have vaccines, this is the projected hospitalizations. So vaccines actually reduce the hospitals getting congested, people needing other type of care, and not being able to receive that care, and surgeries being stopped. So all those things are able to function because of vaccination. But of course, when we come to how effective are these vaccines against variants, let's see the UK data, because other countries don't have such data. US just put out their data this morning for Alpha versus Delta. Now, if we look at vaccine effectiveness as far as symptomatic disease is concerned, with one dose of either vaccine, this is AstraZeneca and Pfizer data put together, with one dose of either vaccine, Pfizer or AstraZeneca, the efficacy of preventing symptomatic infection was 49% for Alpha, whereas it dropped to 35% for Delta. But with both doses, the reduction in symptomatic illness was 89% for Alpha, which dropped to 79% for Delta, which means about 21% fully vaccinated individuals do develop symptomatic infection for Delta. But importantly, important thing is hospitalization. So when it comes to hospitalization, for Alpha, one dose of either vaccine prevented hospitalization by 78%, and for Delta, it is similar, it is 80%. And again, after both doses, the prevention of hospitalization is 93%, and for Delta, it is 96%. So irrespective of the variant, these vaccines are working. They are preventing hospitalization, serious illness, and death. However, the vaccine efficacy in preventing symptomatic infection appears to drastically drop when it comes to Delta. Now, that is about AstraZeneca and Pfizer, and Moderna, the efficacy rates are similar. But of course, people are worried about how does Sinopharm work, because that is the main vaccine being used in Sri Lanka and several other countries. And where Sinopharm is used, there is a lot of questions whether it is working. So this is a study from China, done in a very small population of 292. And one dose of the Sinopharm prevented symptomatic infection in 13.8% of individuals only. And after fully vaccinating, it prevented infection in 59%. However, they say that it was 100% effective against severe disease. So this is a paper from China. Now, if we look at another paper, which is coming out from Bahrain, there's a see how I can stop it. Okay, so this is a study coming out from Bahrain, which is there as a preprint and not peer-reviewed. And when you look at a comparison of the unvaccinated versus Sinopharm, in the under 50 individuals, it does prevent deaths by the odds ratio was 7.6. I mean, it very significantly does prevent deaths in the under 50 population and the over 50 population. So Sinopharm does, this is real world data, and in Bahrain, Sinopharm is one of the vaccines that was more predominantly used. So it does prevent deaths in over 60s and under 60s. It does prevent ICU admission significantly, and it does significantly prevent hospitalizations. But the odds ratio for infections were not that great in over 50s and under 50s. But when you compare to different vaccines, again, because you can't go by the figures, because like if you compare Pfizer with Sinopharm, the ICU admissions with people in Sinopharm was 138 versus only 1% who received Pfizer, but very few, but the denominator is very different. The number of people who received Pfizer and AstraZeneca were very different. So you can't do a head-to-head comparison. But if you go by the percentages, Sinopharm did significantly reduce ICU admissions and deaths in more over 50s and in younger 50s. And this is ICU admissions and this is deaths. So although Sinopharm appears to be less effective than Pfizer, especially in over 50 individuals, it does significantly appear to prevent deaths and ICU admissions, which is the most important thing. We don't know how long the immunity may last for, of course. So this, and we know that immunity is waning with Pfizer, especially at 6 months, the immunity drops quite significantly. And this is why certain countries are thinking of giving booster doses at 6 months for vulnerable individuals. There is a paper out there showing that the reduction in immune responses of AstraZeneca is less than Pfizer over time, but there is still waning of immunity. We do not have any data about waning of antibody responses for Sinopharm. And this is our data from Sri Lanka. So because that is one of the main vaccines used, and this is under review. And with one dose, we saw around 60% seroconversion. With both doses, about 95% individuals seroconverted. But the seroconversion rates were at 99% in young individuals, between 21 to 40, whereas the seroconversion rates in old individuals was significantly less. And also, I won't go on to talk more about the Sinopharm, but Sputnik is another vaccine that is being used in Sri Lanka, and most individuals only received one dose. So we did a head-to-head comparison with AstraZeneca, because AstraZeneca is another adenoviral vector vaccine used in Sri Lanka, and Sputnik is also adenoviral vector vaccine. So with a single dose of Sputnik, again, with a single dose, 88.7% individuals seroconverted, which is good, but the seroconversion rates in old individuals was significantly less than in young individuals. And also, the seroconversion rates and the proportion of individuals who developed neutralizing antibodies was less than compared to those with natural infection and when compared to a single dose of AstraZeneca. Also, a single dose of Sputnik, the proportion of people who develop T-cell responses, which are also extremely important, with a single dose of Sputnik was significantly less than with a single dose of AstraZeneca. Now, the last question is, before we can move forward, is can fully vaccinated individuals transmit infection? And unfortunately, unlike with other variants for Delta, yes. So this is, if you can concentrate on this graph, these are the viral loads given by CT values. And there doesn't seem to be any difference in the viral loads of vaccinated, which is the green line, compared to the unvaccinated. However, this is a different paper. At the start of infection, although both vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals had similar viral loads, the fully vaccinated individuals, the viral loads very quickly declined compared to the unvaccinated individuals. So yes, if people are fully vaccinated, they can transmit infection. The viral loads are similar. However, the viral loads rapidly decline in individuals who are vaccinated. And it is because the Delta variant has so much more infectiousness than the original variants. So if we, so this is a comparison of different variants with the original Wuhan or the ancestral virus. And when you look at the change in the R naught, which is a measure of transmissibility, you can see that for beta, alpha, and gamma, the transmissibility did increase a little bit, about 25 to 38%. But when we compare with the ancestral virus, the Wuhan virus, the transmissibility of Delta is 97% higher. The R naught increases by 97%. So this makes Delta quite a challenge, and Delta is wiping out all other variants because of its high transmissibility and becoming the dominant variant in the world. Yeah, sorry, this is, yeah, this is, okay, so about antibodies and protection. So if you have antibodies, does it mean that you're protected, then you'll be fine? So not all antibodies are the same. So the mere presence of antibodies doesn't tell you anything, basically. What you need to know are how much neutralizing antibodies you have, because neutralizing antibodies have shown to correlate with protection, but we don't know how much neutralizing antibodies you need. But of course, if you have very high levels of neutralizing antibodies, you are protected. T cells are important. The role of T cells are not known. But for vaccines, many old individuals make reduced neutralizing antibodies, and you need a clinical trial to actually measure vaccine efficacy. Now, the future of COVID and moving forward, that is the most important question. And I think it is very obvious by now that we can't eradicate COVID. It is going to be there with us forever. There will be ups and downs. So we know that we had a large pandemic with influenza in 1918 and 1919, where about 50 million of the world population perished, which is more than both of the World War I and II. But of course, now we have influenza and it doesn't cause such devastation, but susceptible individuals, vulnerable individuals do get a yearly vaccination. So for susceptible or vulnerable individuals, it would have to, because of the rapid waning of immunity for COVID vaccines as well, and because of this emergence of variants, whether we like it or not, the vulnerable individuals might have to get a yearly vaccination along with the flu shot. And of course, for us to go back to normal, we will have to achieve full vaccination of all the adults in a community, not just at least all the adults. Now we know that these vaccines have not been tested in children less than 12 years, and no vaccine is approved for children less than 12 years. Some countries are vaccinating children between the age of 12 to 18 years, but this is a very handful of countries. So we have to, the strategy in Sri Lanka is very much different to other countries, and I think there's a lot of room for improvement. But I would like to stop here and take any questions. Thank you.
Professor, I have a question.
Oh, please call me Neelika. Yes.
Okay. It's very interesting. Thank you very much for your presentation, but you only talked about the vaccination. You didn't talk about any other form of treatments. Now, when the epidemic was raging in India, India didn't have enough vaccinations, and there is a thing to say that India gave a cocktail of drugs to millions of people, just distributed a cocktail of drugs. The main drug in that was ivermectin and antibiotic, I think it was, I forget the name now, antibiotic and some vitamin D and zinc or something. Now, and they brought their epidemic down quite a lot. I know vaccines work because I have had both and I'm running around everywhere. So why did the equivalent of FDA in Sri Lanka, I forget the name of that color.
NMRA.
Yes. They ran down ivermectin, and why aren't we talking about treatment?
Okay, so I'll answer that question. So Sri Lanka has very much been a country which follows evidence-based. So I think Sri Lanka follows evidence-based approach for vaccines and treatment. And of course, when we take ivermectin, I mean, apart from ivermectin and the other antibiotic was azithromycin, India was giving ivermectin, azithromycin, and also dexamethasone for a large number of people. And in Sri Lanka, certain individuals actually do prescribe this cocktail. And at the same time, we did see, of course, a large number of Indians dying, although it was officially reported at 400,000. Now the figures are coming out as it's actually 4 million, which is a large number. Even for India, 4 million is a large number. And we saw these complications happening in India as well in the form of this black fungus, which was very evident. And that was because of dexamethasone misuse. And in clinical trials, dexamethasone has only been shown to improve people when they have moderate to severe pneumonia. Similarly, now when we take ivermectin, okay, some can argue that ivermectin, of course, is a harmless drug. But in Western medicine, there are so many other drugs that are harmless, but without any evidence. So the authorities for Sri Lanka or elsewhere, so this ivermectin issue has been brought up in so many other countries. That ivermectin is cheap, why don't we go ahead? And a similar sort of trend went with HCQ also, hydroxychloroquine last year. A hype about hydroxychloroquine, this anti-malarial drug, how cheap it is, why can't we use HCQ? And the big pharma are blocking HCQ, and when it's such a super drug. But then later, actually, clinical trials showed that although HCQ is very cheap and it just didn't seem to cause a lot of harm, actually in the clinical trials, they definitely showed that it had no effect. And actually, it had a detrimental effect in some people because of cardiac arrhythmias. So now, when it comes to ivermectin, yes, it is a cheap drug. It doesn't do a lot of harm, but there is no evidence to show that it works. Just because so similarly, we can say in Sri Lanka, there's a lot of traditional drugs also being distributed, bully and various other forms of treatment claiming to work and not cause any harm. So just because there is a drug that doesn't seem to cause harm, and I don't know if people just should take it out of desperation when there is no evidence. So the WHO and all global responsible authorities have gone through all the trial data, and there is absolutely no evidence as of now to recommend any of these drugs. And indiscriminate use of certain drugs like azithromycin, which is antibiotic, may cause other issues as well. Thank you.
Narada, if I might add on, Narada, CDC has put out a warning against using ivermectin. The number of calls to poison control in the state of Mississippi has gone up because of ivermectin. And ivermectin is not harmless. And most importantly, the horses are dying because the horses antibiotic is being taken by humans.
Yeah.
So ivermectin is not, has problems. It's totally fake news and pushed by a group of doctors who are just unethical.
Yeah, but Karunian, but I think the Australian equivalent of this approved it, isn't it?
No. That's all the fake news. That's all the fake news.
Yeah, because Australia, if you look at their regulatory authority, they have also said that you cannot use ivermectin unless it's in a clinical trial.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Can I say something, please?
Thank you. Can I ask a question, please?
Shanti, go ahead.
Sorry. Nilika, firstly, thank you very much for your time and a very interesting talk. I enjoyed it. I may have missed this. Two questions, really. Number one, is there a gender difference between males and females about catching the infection? Secondly, we are talking about in UK about having a booster vaccination. Is there a recommended time lag between taking the second dose and the booster vaccination, please?
Yes. So actually, there is a gender difference, a very obvious gender difference as far as death and severe disease is concerned. Unfortunately, men seem to be having a little bit of a more mortality and severe disease than females, which is unfortunate to men. Now, when it comes to booster dose, when it comes to booster doses, so after evaluating the data, what I heard was from people from Oxford is that yes, UK is planning to give a booster dose. But not to everybody. I mean, you don't need to give booster doses to people who are under 60 years. So it will start with vulnerable people, like they started the vaccination program, and it will not be given to everybody because everybody does not need a booster dose. They are thinking of giving a booster dose 5 to 6 months after getting the second dose. This is what I hear.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
If I may jump in. Sorry, if I may jump.
Go ahead, Nilika. Yeah,
If I
Sam, you are, sorry, go ahead.
If I can jump in here.
Sure, Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, because it's related, it's a little related to the booster shot. So
One minute, Sam is talking, and I think he's muted. Sam, hold on till Sarah finishes. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
Okay, so Nilika, thank you very much for your most impressive talk, and I'm so impressed not only with your qualifications and all your work, but your demeanor and everything. Very impressive. So
thank you, madam. Yeah,
thank you very much. And the question was, in terms of the booster, there is some consideration of whether people should be taking the third shot I'm talking about, whether you should take the same one that you've been taking, like the Pfizer or the Moderna, or whether it is better to take another than the one you've been before. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yes, so because actually some trials, not about the booster doses, but mixed and match the first dose and second doses. So in these trials, they mixed and match AstraZeneca first dose with Moderna and Pfizer second dose, or Pfizer and Moderna first dose and AstraZeneca second dose. And such trials showed that when you mix and match vaccines, you got a better immune response than having the same vaccine. So in the UK, what I have been told, because of the data of those trials, for the booster dose, people who had 2 doses of AstraZeneca are likely to be given a Pfizer. And if it was Pfizer, people are likely to be given AstraZeneca. So to be sort of from a different type. But in the US, they are sort of, because US has been using mRNA vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer. So they are interchanging it as well, but they are not, most of the time it is the same thing that they are getting, because they don't have other vaccines apart from, they have the Johnson & Johnson, but it's a single dose vaccine. So they're going for the 2 mRNA vaccines.
So in that vaccine situation, the booster, the people who got the Moderna, is it better for them to get the Pfizer next time, or is it better for them to continue to get the Moderna, or is there any difference?
So because so Pfizer and Moderna more or less the same, but the data shows that the immune responses to Delta is better with Moderna than with Pfizer. So I don't, this is looking at immune responses. The antibody responses to Delta were better with Moderna than Pfizer. So I don't know what countries will decide.
I see. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Sam, you want to say something, Sam? Sam, you are muted, madam. Sam, you are muted.
Arul, I talk, I'll ask something afterwards.
Yeah, sure. Sam.
I'll ask something afterwards.
Yeah, Sam, you are muted.
Sam, unmute yourself. Sam, unmute yourself.
Not here.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to ask Nilika, as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, do you think we have reached the peak of the current wave, or do you think it's going to get any worse, in your opinion?
So I think to answer that question, first of all, different provinces will reach the peak at different time points, because we know that the Delta started with the Western province, and I think the Western province is close to hitting the peak. But when we look at the case numbers in Western province, it's still going up. It hasn't plateaued yet. So that is the problem with the Western province. But Delta just went out of the Western province about 2-3 weeks ago. So the exponential rise hasn't even started in some provinces. So the other provinces will hit the peak much later than the Western province. So hopefully if we push the vaccination program in other provinces before we see this Delta taking off in certain provinces, maybe we have a window of opportunity, but we don't know. The other problem is that we need to collect very accurate data to see if we hit the peak or not. So the quality of data also matters to interpret all what is happening.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's very useful. Well, I'm hoping to go to Sri Lanka. I'm just wondering when I should go.
January.
Wait
January.
a little.
Wait a little longer.
Yeah.
Thank
Mohan?
you very much.
Yeah. Hello, Nilika. Thank you very much. I also enjoyed your talk very much. Just to go back to ivermectin bit, somebody rang me from Sri Lanka to say that the GP in Sri Lanka had prescribed ivermectin to a brother. So I know a little bit about ivermectin, and it is also called Stromectol. And in Sri Lanka, I believe it is 300 rupees a tablet. It is normally given for strongyloides and scabies, and even veterinary surgeons use ivermectin. So FDA has not approved this drug in up to about March. I don't know what the current situation is, and it is given on a named patient basis. And as Arul said, it is not without risk, and it can say. So there is a problem about this ivermectin, but it looks like in Sri Lanka, some people are using it fairly on a rapid sort of basis.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes, quite a large number of not family physicians. Like when I say family physicians, I'm talking about people with postgraduate qualifications. But in Sri Lanka, anybody who graduates like from medical faculty yesterday also calls themselves a general practitioner. I mean, that's how Sri Lanka works. So and so you have a large number of such individuals, and unfortunately there are certain professors also actively promoting ivermectin to be given. So in Sri Lanka, if you look at the prescriptions, people are getting ivermectin, dexamethasone, azithromycin, vitamin C, and vitamin D together. So that drug cocktail is being given together, unfortunately, very frequently.
Thank you.
I think, sure, go ahead. Benita, go ahead.
Hi, Nilika. There's Benita here. Thanks very much. That's
yes,
very
yes, madam, yes.
Can't remember. Yes, I just want to know, you just said that the viral load after the second vaccine drops, compared to the people who are not vaccinated to the vaccination. Then the viral load drops fairly fast. So now, say, there's a gap between the first one and the second dose, say 6 weeks or 12 weeks later, and then you are having another 8 months to 1 year if there's a booster or no booster. Yeah. So will the viral load go up again, or is there a chance that you are reinfected? You are exposed to another person who is as a carrier or who is shedding. The person who has had both vaccine, how vulnerable will that person be during that period? So whether we have to be careful from day one till the next vaccine that is due for 1 year later, or you are just completely immune? The viral load, how does that go?
Yes, yes. So we know that vaccinated people are transmitting infection to others. And vaccinated, it was not very frequent with the previous variants, but it is unfortunately much more frequent with Delta. So this is the issue we are facing, and we were hoping to achieve herd immunity through vaccination. But for that, people have to stop transmitting, or achieve a thing called sterilizing immunity, which doesn't seem to be happening. So for a lot of people, the third booster will be actual infection.
Oh.
Thank you for that.
Do Do you go for an actual infection?
I would recommend it, but I said unfortunate. No, I mean, it's. I mean, I think a lot of people are not going to have a choice in whether they are, they want it or not. It's what they're going to get.
Nilika, Ranjit Bandarnaik, Don Banda is an epidemiologist who once long ago at one of our get-togethers proposed that they can get rid of the whole of influenza virus by being self-isolated and separated from each person for 3 weeks. So Ranjit is on the call. Ranjit, do you want to propose a similar solution to COVID?
Yeah, thanks, Karunian. I enjoyed your talk, Nilika. Thank you very much. I would have pursued that angle if not for the fact that we've got this new variant, and I don't think whatever we do, we are going to get rid of this. Even New Zealand now, we've got this damn thing. It's come over from New South Wales, and we are having about 400 cases at the last count, which is very small numbers, but we still got it. So I don't think any amount of isolation or cutting borders completely is going to stop that particular variant. It's just a matter of time before it gets in. So our only hope is the vaccination. But even that, people are wondering whether it's going to be sufficient to stop this variant. I'm not going to ask that question from Nilika, but I have another question, Karunian. Can I ask that now?
Sure, go ahead.
This is also a public health question. I mean, we know that vaccines are generally in short supply, particularly in some of the poorer countries. And there has been some suggestion that the vaccine can be used intradermally, much lower dose, and certainly it has worked for other diseases. What is your opinion on that issue, Nilika?
Yes, so the problem, sir, is that these vaccines have not been tested intradermally. So then we have no data, and without data, I mean, in other vaccines intradermally, it can be immunogenic, but without data, we don't know how effective it is. But the other sad thing is, like, we know that a lot of countries do have a lot of excess doses which are soon going to expire. And it is sad that such a lot of, 3.6 billion doses of Pfizer to be, I mean, all those vaccines are not being shared. So if you're using them for your country, that's a different story. But if you're not using them, not sharing it with poorer countries is I think it's very, very sad. Yeah.
It's sad, isn't it? Yeah, I'm aware of the fact that there is an international sort of a move to collect all these. Bill Gates started something, didn't he, to collect these vaccines for development?
The COVAX movement, but it hasn't been going on as well as people thought it would.
Yeah. Now I want to extend that question a bit because I've seen your CV and you have you've got a lot of research funds. So is there any possibility of, no country has done that sort of research to look at intradermal vaccination for COVID, but people are asking on the internet. You will find people asking the question and wondering whether some countries might not be able to do that. The problem is the vaccine manufacturers are not keen at all on this because they don't want lower dosages anywhere. So Sri Lanka, I suppose, is not in a position to do much research on this. You're sort of inundated.
Because not at this moment, sir, because given the situation we are in, which is, so people are trying to, the unvaccinated people are desperate to get some sort of vaccine when you see the horror happening.
Yeah.
So, Nilika, so thank you. Can I make just a personal comment? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Vix. Go ahead. Vikramachan, go ahead, please.
Nilika, I just want to compliment you on two things. One is your excellent academic achievement And the second thing, your decision to stay back with that spectacular knowledge in most of these events, you would have become an expatriate. And it's great to see you stick to your mother country and not desert. My question is, now when you give this immunization, there is a small hesitant group. One of the indications is a pre-genetic effect on the white vaccines affecting the gene modification or any other complications along. But you have any comments on it, please?
Yes, yes, sir. So, I mean, these vaccines, the clinical trials started last July. So it's actually been more than a year that these vaccines have been used on people. And although, for instance, if you look at the mRNA platforms, although they were used very rapidly turned around to use for this pandemic, they have been under clinical trials for a very long time on humans. So, and I mean, they didn't just suddenly, like fall from the sky, which people don't seem to know. And I think if you take Sri Lanka, we don't have that much of an anti-vax movement. The anti-vax movements are also very much funded and are originated in Western countries, the flat earthers. I hope you know who the flat earthers are, the people who believe that the earth is flat. And so the flat earthers and the anti-vaxxers, so they are very educated and they gather actually a lot of scientific knowledge to put across their agenda. So this is a very organized campaign, this anti-vax campaign. So it is not just people being frightened, they are given fed that sort of information through social media.
Sorry, I'm just gonna address that actually because hi, my name is Shamima Maroof. I'm Dr. Maroof's daughter. I'm unfortunately only caught about half of your presentation, which was very, very, well sourced, and yeah, I appreciate what everyone else is appreciating as well. I just wanted to say that you can't compare anti-vaxxers to flat earthers. They're not quite the same thing. And also vaccine hesitancy comes from underreports of, side effects with this particular vaccine. I can understand why people are underplaying the reports, because obviously if there's even one of these things in the media, people will get hold of that, and there'll be more people not taking the vaccine than before. Now, the two things I feel that are not being addressed in the media and by the medical teams is that we are not talking about boosting our immune system and actually functional medicine. So things like vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and all these other things that are known to boost our immune systems and protect us from viral infections. Now, if you say from an anti-vaxxer's point of view, I have decided not to take the vaccine myself. My husband's not taking it, and neither are my children. And that's my stance, because although you say mRNA vaccines have been researched for a very long time, in actuality, it's been 10 years, and they've only really researched them on humans in the last year. And for me, it's not about no vaccine, it's about safe vaccines. And I don't have a problem with the old standard vaccines that exist where they base it on whole kill cells or, of the virus or attenuated virus. But in this case, there's not enough data, in my opinion, on safety. I've advised my parents, for example, who have taken both doses, not to take the booster dose, even though they're in a vulnerable category, and instead to rely on vitamin C and D and zinc, which has basically protected us, because I have not been socially isolating myself in order to protect and take care of my mother. We've been going to busy markets, and where we live here in London, in South London, is a very busy area. So we're putting ourselves constantly at risk by doing that. And I'm basically going to perhaps, state this more than ever, that I think we need to consider that these vaccines are not 100% efficacious. They're not going to protect. None of them say they have 100% protection. And I was just doing some research myself. I'm sorry, I'm a dentist by origin, so I don't have your wealth of research and knowledge. But based on, I've just been doing research. Now, with the UK, we all know that they allowed, because we didn't close off and put the country to lockdown early enough, the virus really ripped through in its original form. It did. And before the vaccination campaign even started in the UK, antibodies were were measured in this country. And they're saying that within the UK, and especially in parts of London, you have innate antibodies within the population of at least minimum of 60%, and in London higher probably, but they just didn't do, obviously they didn't test us as much. So based on that, I mean, I'm thinking about right now, I'm hearing about countries like Israel, for example, and Malta, where they've got very high vaccination rates, in fact, higher than our vaccination rates in this country. And now what's happening is that the infection rates are going up, as are the death rates, okay? And the question mark is like, why is this happening? And my question mark is that in this country, for example, infection rates are extremely high. The levels of our peak, I think, in the first wave. Despite that, there's a break between the infection rates and the death rates. And my question mark is this because we have more innate herd immunity? Inadvertently, I mean, it happened, we had a large number of deaths in this country, yes, but is this because of the herd immunity? And I went and had a look then at other countries and other cities, because, for example, in the United States, the vaccination rates varies across the board within the country from east to west. So there's an example of Oregon. Oregon, again, has extremely high vaccination rates, 67%. And again, rates are going up, as are death rates. And they also were very good in, let's say, implementing social distancing measures and mask mandates, etc. Israel is another of those countries. And then there's Malta, and there were a few others. I just did a few comparisons, and these are the ones I remember right now off the top of my head. Now, looking at India, for example, now within the second wave, they had, again, before that second wave hit, they had large, they were testing populations, and they found, again, innate antibodies, herd immunity, again, that was high. Then they got hit with the second wave, and that was extraordinary in many ways. And again, now, if you look at them, their vaccination rates are pretty low, it's 33%. However, the link between infections and deaths has gone. Again, is this herd immunity? I'm not talking about herd immunity as being a safe way of letting it rip. I'm just saying, if we ate healthier, for example, COVID deaths have been linked to people who eat more processed diets, people who got more severe disease were vitamin D deficient, for example. People who died were vitamin D deficient. Now, if we just backed up the vaccines with also supplements, wouldn't this give people protection rather than this false sense of protection just from the vaccines? Because I know people who will take the vaccine and eat unhealthily, not exercise, and I don't think that's enough. And we're coming along from the previous doctor from New Zealand, he mentioned that this is not going to be enough, and I agree with him. And I agree with him on that because you're never going to eradicate. I think eventually COVID will become something like endemic, and it's going to be perhaps milder. The more infectious, isn't it? Less milder it gets on the whole. I think that's a general trend. But we do need to also start talking as doctors about the other side of complementary medicine or functional medicine, how we equip our bodies better with to fight this onslaught of pandemics, which are going to be, from now they're saying this is going to be more and more frequent. And let's say we get hit with another pandemic in 2 years' time, that's going to take another 6 months for a vaccine or something to be developed. So we're not thinking long term. I think we need to change the public health message a little bit.
So, thank you, Salima. I think Nilika, before you answer, I just want to find out something. Is Lawrence on the call?
Yes.
Lawrence is there, is it?
Yeah, he's here.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. So we are going to have a little bit of a presentation by Lawrence Ratnasabadi on the psychology of anti-vaxxers. But after that, I'll let Nilika talk. And one question, Nilika, is that Salima asked is health program adequate to prevent infection also? If you take vitamin D and exercise, will you not get COVID?
Yeah. So a lot of people are taking vitamin D, and exercising. And unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, we had very fit, healthy people taking the ideal diet, taking lots of vitamin D, who are really exercising well. We do have people who are exercising and do all those things in Sri Lanka who perished. And of course, in India also, I mean, about 50% of Indians had herd immunity before Delta hit, and about 4 million perishing. I mean, that is through natural immunity. Some people didn't perish, they got natural infection and they were fine. 4 million perished. So of course, when you let it rip through, you have that sort of things happening. So when Delta or other variant comes again, that a similar thing won't happen, because the people who have lived have got the infection and have got natural immunity. So the idea of vaccination is to give them that natural immunity artificially, so that when they get infected, they will not die. They will get infected, but they will not die and they will live. So that is the whole idea. Yes, people are taking lots of vitamin D, exercising, and doing all that. Yes.
My only point is, like, there is a lot of information and data on people who have, let's say, comorbidities and then dying from COVID. There's not enough data on, let's say, for example, just serum levels of vitamin D and these people. So you're saying they're coming in, they're healthy. Where's your evidence for that? You know, you have to back it up. I mean, this is concerns is that there's not enough on the other side of things, you see. So we can say a lot of that. I mean, I see this in the news every day. Oh, very fit and healthy, ripped guy, you know, muscular and everything, died unvaccinated. Well, we don't know anything about him. We also know that, for example, bodybuilders take a lot of steroids, and in itself, you know, their immune system's not so healthy because of that. So,
If I can just answer that very shortly, quickly. In Sri Lanka and India, a lot of men are bare-bodied, if you just notice, and they a lot of hard, you know, I'm not talking about bodybuilders, I'm talking about people who work on the streets, who who are exposed to the sun because they are bare-bodied. They get a lot of vitamin C. They don't eat junk food and stuff because they can't afford it anyway, and who have perished.
Are they malnourished? Are they malnourished in that?
No.
So I think this is a good segment.
I think we should not convert this into a debate.
So I think this is a good segment to go through the other issue that we have, and that is we're going to have a presentation. Nilika, I hope you'll stay on. It's going longer because your talk was very interesting. Your talk was too interesting. Yes, there are so many questions. But at some point, if maybe after the talk, we'll continue the discussion. I'd like you to touch on long COVID too. You know, whether you are seeing that in Sri Lanka, you know, which you did not touch. And also the therapeutics that Narada talked about. Are there development on therapeutics for COVID too? These are two subjects I'd like you to talk on. But before we do that, given the discussion we've had, I think this is an appropriate time to talk to our resident magician, our psychologist, and our good friend, Dr. Lawrence Ratnasabhavdi. For those who are not from our batch, Lawrence is our batchmate. He's a very eminent consultant psychiatrist. He knows the mind so well. I sometimes get worried talking to him. But he also is a magician, and he has entertained us with his magic. Today he's going to talk to us on the psychology of vaccine denial or reluctance. So Lawrence, Maruf, you got Lawrence's slide, or Lawrence, how are you going to talk?
Lawrence, can you unmute yourself? I think we are not hearing you.
Lawrence. Lawrence, you are muted, Lawrence. He's there, he is.
The sound system is not coming through.
Nilani, I noted that you want to ask a question, Nilani, and we will come back to you. But let's give Lawrence. I saw your hand, and we will listen to you. I will ask your question, Nilani.
Okay. Thank you.
Lawrence?
I think he's. I think we can join. There's something. There is no sound.
Can someone telephone him or something, Maruf?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know whether he's aware of it.
He's
not muted.
He's not connected.
Okay, so while Maruf, can you help by getting him connected? But while doing that, can we listen to Nilani's question? Nilani, you want to talk to ask Nilika? Nilika, you are also gone off screen, Nilika. You are muted.
I'm here. Yes, I just muted myself so that others could speak. Yeah.
Sure. So Nilani is also one of our batchmates. Nilani?
Sorry. Thank you, Karnin. Thank you, Nilika, for your very interesting talk. I definitely wanted to be here, though I'm technologically that inept that I'm pleased I was able to listen to part of your talk. The question I have is my 76-year-old brother who lives alone. He's widowed. He got struck with COVID and had very mild symptoms. I think he was lucky to have me as a doctor. Otherwise, he could have passed off, he could have ended up with complications. And he was first in the government sector, then we had to remove him to the private sector because they didn't have ventilators. Anyway, thankfully, he's home. I have a very important question where I am concerned. I would very much like to look after him, but I'm not sure whether he's still infectious or contagious. He's 14 days past the day that he had the PCR. So do we repeat the PCRs? And the doctors in the hospital said the viral load is high. So I'd like your expert advice on that because I feel very guilty that I can't look after him, but I give him all the advice. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so it's like this, madam. So if somebody had pneumonia, they can be shedding infective virus for some time. So mildly symptomatic individuals or asymptomatic individuals, after they get COVID, they're generally not infectious after 10 to 14 days. But people who get pneumonia can be infectious for a longer duration. But after a person completely recovers, let's say, like after complete recovery, they also are considered non-infectious after about 7 days. The PCR can be positive for a very long time. So this is why, in Sri Lanka, people have a habit of doing PCRs after they get positive from time to time before they are asked to come to work. Some companies ask them to do a PCR and then they are still positive, because after getting COVID, people can be positive for up to 3 months. So to stop that, only the Sri Lankan government has said, after somebody becomes PCR positive, don't test for 3 months. But the general rule is, if you had mild or asymptomatic infection, people are generally non-infectious after 10 to 14 days. But if you've had pneumonia, after complete recovery, you're okay, you're non-infectious after 7 days.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
So is Lawrence ready for the talk, Maruf? Okay. So while we are waiting for Lawrence, does anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I do, Karunian, if I may.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Saru.
It relates actually to infectivity and this question of herd immunity and vaccinated and still being able to be carriers. To me now, just after Nilika spoke and said, you're not infectious after 3 weeks or so, how is it that we consider that you're asymptomatic and you can still be infectious? I know the Delta virus is especially infectious, but even so, if you're vaccinated and if you have this almost 99% immunity, and you're still able to transmit the disease. So I'm a little puzzled with that.
Yes, so I will explain that. So when I said asymptomatic infection, I wasn't talking about vaccinated individuals. I was talking about unvaccinated individuals. So when unvaccinated individuals get infection, they can be infectious for 10 to 14 days. Although because after all, especially children, the vast majority of children, when they get infected, they are asymptomatic, but they pass on the infection. But vaccinated individuals, they are not going to be passing on infectious virus particles for a longer duration. Like what studies have shown, like they may be infectious for maybe like 5 days, but not usually after that. But we need more studies on Delta and vaccinated individuals, because it's not long since we've had Delta. It's not been around for a long time to do a lot of studies to actually to come into firm conclusions.
Mm-hmm. So our chances of being carriers, so-called, would be like next to nothing if you've been vaccinated and if you yourself have been exposed.
So I don't think you need to be worried that you are a carrier if the vast majority of people are vaccinated. So then a carrier, even if you transmit the virus to another vaccinated person, that person is not likely to develop, very severe disease. And then when the disease gets endemic, even if you pass the virus to each other, you're not going to get very bad. Like, all those SARS-CoV-2 just came recently. We have so many other coronaviruses, and people think that when they first came to infect people on Earth from of course animal hosts or something, they would have caused people who survived, of course, got infected and got immunity the natural way. Then when they get reinfected, they're fine, and that is what we're seeing with influenza. Okay, now certain people need flu shots every year, because when they get infected, they get severe pneumonia and can get and die of influenza. But the vast majority of people get natural infection with influenza. So when we immunize a large proportion of the adults with COVID, when it becomes a childhood infection, then that's fine. So children will get COVID as children, and they don't need to be vaccinated because they're already immune. Now, if we look at chickenpox, which I think everybody is familiar with, now, when children get chickenpox, that's fine. But when adults get chickenpox, the mortality rates are higher than with COVID. So initially, but when we are adults, because chickenpox is a childhood illness, nobody has issue, because even if you get reinfected or whatever with chickenpox and you're exposed, you're fine. So as long as COVID becomes a childhood illness, then and when you become adults, you're already immune, then things are fine when it becomes endemic. But until it gets to that point, rather than letting it get there naturally and kill a lot of people along the way, the easier way to do it is through vaccination.
Oh, I'm 100% for vaccination and for boosters and all of it. Make no mistake on that. I would take the booster any day it's available. But yeah, my question was related to the cancer business. I've been a little confused on that. And also, in terms of the so-called herd immunity. So at some point, if we do reach that stage, what you're saying is chances for the human beings are relatively better.
Yes. Because it's like chickenpox, isn't it? Because when all the adult population are immune and it becomes childhood infection, the children can get, like whatever infection, and because children don't have bad COVID, so let them get infected. And so when they become adults and get reinfected, that's fine. They're not getting the infection for the first time. They've already developed natural immunity. But you don't want to take chickenpox to an adult population who've never had chickenpox and give the virus. So many people would die. Okay, so but if you give it to a children's population, that's fine. So that is the difference that is needed to be made right now.
Thank you, Nilika. Maruf, where is Lawrence? Is Lawrence coming?
Lawrence says his computer has failed and Zoom is corrupted. So he'll make his lecture next time.
Later next time.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about it. We were hoping to follow this up with if you can spare us a little more time. There are 3 areas, Nilika, I think, just for our own sake. One is therapeutics. I think already Narada talked about therapeutics. What are the hopes of therapeutics? We do have Regeneron, the monoclonal antibodies, but anything else? And number 2 is long COVID. And also, if you can briefly talk about the risk for children, you alluded to that. But just briefly on those 3 subjects, if you can give us some information, that'll be it. And if anyone else wants to ask questions too, go ahead, please.
So to talk about therapeutics currently, if
you are
somebody
breaking
has
off, Nilaka. Maybe if you can get closer to your mic, please.
Yeah, I think my internet connection is a little bit, it's saying unstable from time to time. So I think, because it's 8 o'clock here, and I think this is high internet usage time in Sri Lanka. So I think we tend to have unstable connections at this time.
Go ahead.
So basically, as far as therapeutics are concerned, we have dexamethasone and the tocilizumab, which are proven by the recovery trial for people with, you select your patients with severe pneumonia. And of course, we have the anticoagulants like enoxaparin to prevent coagulation. And there are so many other drugs which are being trialed right now to see if they can be used as therapeutics. And there are large trials going on. And hopefully we will have some results soon. And these monoclonal antibodies were approved in the UK also recently. So that is given to high-risk individuals to prevent getting them into severe disease. And so let's see about therapeutics with the trials going on. About long COVID, it is the people who get severe disease who tend to get long COVID more often. But then again, long COVID has been seen with people who have mild infection also. It is more common among women, and it can be in the cognitive form. So we don't have any data for Sri Lanka about the proportion of people having long COVID. And people aren't talking about long COVID that much in Sri Lanka. I think long COVID is not something that in Sri Lanka we are discussing that much. But I know when you talk to patients, some patients do seem to be having problems. But if you've been in ICU for a long time, and then there is ICU related issues as well, then you would have muscle dysfunction and so on. But then these cognitive effects also seem to be an issue, at least for some time. But we need to get to the bottom of long COVID. And what they have shown in other countries is when people with long COVID were vaccinated, they got better. So vaccines seem to have an effect on long COVID based on the data coming from US. Now, ending with children, of course, Sri Lanka and I mean, US is vaccinating kids between 12 to 18 years.
Dr. Ted anymore. Grapes.
Sorry?
Sorry, no way. Someone should mute. Please mute your.
So US is sort of vaccinating kids between 12 to 18, and UK has decided to vaccinate kids
please mute your.
Between the ages of 12 to 18, and so I hope you can hear me. So because my battery went dead. Because UK wants more data about vaccination in children, how safe they are, because these were the trials were done mainly on adults, and it was developed as an adult vaccine. So I think we need more data on the effects on children, but children do seem to be getting hospitalized quite a bit these days, especially because the Delta seems to be affecting increased hospitalizations. So I think we do need more data regarding children to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Nilika,
one of your slides, sorry, go ahead. Benita, go ahead, Benita.
In children, I just saw one of the physicians in Sri Lanka had reported this silent hypoxia in children who have got better, and suddenly the oxygen saturation drops and they are falling off or they are falling sick again. Do you know anything about that, please?
So yes, so that was this 12-year-old child who came walking in with oxygen saturation of 50%. The GP had discovered that the child's oxygen saturation was 60% and was asked to quickly go to hospital. The parents apparently didn't realize that it was very significant. There was a delay in going to the child just had oxygen saturation of 50% when coming in. So because of that, there were issues and the child did pass away.
So this is what they reported was the children got better, but later, like a long haul syndrome, they are getting silent hypoxia. In children, they are noticing it. I just saw that being reported. That's what by Sri Lankan physician. Yeah.
Yeah. So I heard a completely different story, but yeah.
It's an evolving disease. We don't know everything, and
Yes,
you just have to keep. And Padmalingam, you want to say something? You're muted, Pads.
Padmalingam, you made a fantastic presentation. We are proud of your achievement and what you are doing in our country. The herd immunity, they say when the vaccination rates go above 70, there will be herd immunity. Is that going to be the only way we can prevent this horrible disease?
There are a lot of unknowns. So I think herd immunity in the sense some people getting infected and some people getting vaccinated, that could be the way forward. But of course, we don't know that the kids are not going to get vaccinated, especially under 12 years, because we don't know. And there are no vaccines for kids less than 12 years. But if they get naturally infected, then either by vaccination or through natural infection, when we get the vast majority of people infected, then I think we can go forward. Yeah, but we don't have to wait till then. We can slowly progress.
Thank you. Anyone else with any comments? Yeah, yes. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Because I'm confused, Nilaka, because as usual, I'm a bit confused here. I had COVID before I had the vaccination, and I thought I had some long COVID-like symptoms, and then I had the vaccination, and still I think I have some symptoms. Do the long COVID symptoms after vaccination different from those symptoms that you get prior to having the vaccination? Is there any studies to show the difference?
No, not that I'm aware of. No, not that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Right. So you can get long COVID symptoms even after vaccination.
Yeah. So the vaccines have actually got rid of a lot of long COVID symptoms, and in some individuals actually completely abolished the long COVID symptoms. But I don't know the proportion of individuals who went on to have it and in what form.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So, Nilaka, if someone is vaccinated and have infection and long COVID, do you give a third dose? Is vaccination therapeutic for long COVID?
No. The long COVID and the vaccination were people who got COVID before vaccination and had long COVID and were subsequently given the vaccinations when they were available.
Thank you.
Can I say, as I said, I'm a bit confused, Nilaka, stemming from Karunia's question. So you can get long COVID symptoms even after vaccination, if you get an infection.
Yeah. If you've had long COVID symptoms, I don't know in what proportion of people the vaccination completely stops it. So if it doesn't stop by vaccination, maybe some people still have some residual long COVID symptoms.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes, go ahead. Go ahead, yeah.
How good is the inpatient management of COVID in Sri Lanka, in Colombo? The reason I'm asking is I just heard today Gigi Poonamlam's wife, Yogi, has been admitted with COVID and she's on oxygen in one of the hospitals in Colombo.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Go ahead.
How good is the inpatient management of COVID in Sri Lanka, in Colombo versus Jaffna?
Yeah, so in Colombo, the patient management is currently challenging because our hospitals are full, ICUs are full, all high dependence units are full. So sometimes when these are full, and if you actually need to get into ICU there or HDU, there is no opportunity sometimes. So management also depends on availability of resources.
Okay.
And the hospitals are using the monoclonal antibodies.
It's tocilizumab, but again, we have run out in most hospitals.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? Or...
Yeah, can I ask something?
Sure. Go ahead, Mohan.
Nilika, how many types of variants are there up to date, and they can keep coming? There might be more variants coming as well, and Delta, I suppose, is one of the most transmissible.
Yeah, so actually, there are 4 variants of concern. I mean, there are other variants which are not of concern, but it's the 4 variants of concern that are there. And of course, the previous variants are rapidly replaced by Delta, and Delta is the dominant variant right now. And I think it will remain so for quite some time, unless it is replaced by something better.
The other thing I wanted to ask was, there seemed to be a bit of a debate earlier in the day about the benefit of vaccines against not having vaccines. But I think the information up to current levels show that vaccine antibodies protect